Well, welcome to the Deakin University Art Gallery and to our second exhibition of 2024, Jumaadi, the Unaccounted Sea. To formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I'm speaking today. I pay respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditional custodians, elders and ancestors of all the lands from which you may be watching, and I express our gratitude for their care of country, which continues to sustain us as it has done for millennia. I acknowledge any First Nations audience members who might be listening and watching today. Education, creativity and culture have an ancient heritage on this continent, which we aim to honour and reflect in the different ways we continue to teach and learn here at Deakin. If we haven't met before, my name is James Lynch and I'm curator here at the Deakin University Art Gallery. For audiences with low vision, I would describe myself as a middle-aged male with short cropped hair, a greying beard, clear reading glasses, blue eyes, and I'm seated in our Deakin University Art Gallery in front of a black painted wall with white paper cutouts. It's always wonderful to have an opportunity to speak directly with artists today, so we are really fortunate to be joined by the incredible Indonesian and Australian artist, Jumaadi. So Jumaadi, firstly, welcome to NAM and to Melbourne and to the Deakin Art Gallery. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, James. Good day, everyone. I'm pleased to be here.
This exhibition features two bodies of works. The main artwork is called Jolly Jolan, and it's a major work comprising of over 350 individual paper cutouts. And in correspondence with me, you've talked about how this artwork began when you were in lockdown. Could you talk a little about the thinking of this work, kind of how it began and how it's kind of evolved and grown?
In 2020, the COVID was starting to have big impact to our life, especially starting, I think it was in March 2020. And prior to that, I have a lot of traveling to do between, Sydney and Yogyakarta, Bali and Surabaya and vice versa. That's how my practice was back then. But then it was locked down, so the border was no longer sort of that flexible. And I spent of that 2 or 3 years until 2023 in Sydney. And during that time, maybe a year of my studio practice, were making this work here, Jolly Jolan, and dedicated to paper cutout traditions. And I was looking at specifically into our relationship with our environment, with nature, including flora and fauna and formation of geographical formations, and with the sea and also our relationship, or my relationship, with humanity, with the humankind. I guess it was the impact of the lockdown, of that the geography was becoming much more presence. The border of geography was becoming much more presence. And you heard news here and there that nature take over human environment more so than before, because of the aeroplane is no longer flying, a lot of business activities. So I thought, at the end, my friend, nature wins. And from that sort of, I think a lot about how powerful nature is without our involvement. But at the same time, in our life, I think we misabuse our role. Should be to take care of nature, but I think we abuse more than what we should do. I think a lot about that kind of relationship. What can I give to nature back, or what I can give to humanity, or I was far away from my mother. I mean, I don't need her as much, maybe, but maybe I do need her that much. But I no longer can visit her and a lot of other people that I love in Java or different places. I mean, I was becoming much more closer to my direct family here and friends, but still give me a lot of question on distances and closeness and all of those. And simple drawing lines, paper, knife, rubber. That was the material that evolved during that time to construct their ideas into a bit of epical kind of art. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, in your answer, you've kind of touched on some of my thoughts for my next question. You grew up in Indonesia, but then studied at the National Art School in Sydney. And yourself and your family are based in Sydney, but you spend a great deal of time travelling, especially over the last few years, between Sydney, Yogyakarta, your studios, Java and Bali. Could you describe your connection to place or to a concept of home? What does home mean to you?
A concept of home, a place, and our connection to it. Half of the idea is just idea, I reckon, and half of that idea of home, concept of place, is really, really physical to me.
Yeah.
So between the idea and the physical, for example, like a longing or missing, is very, very physical.
Yeah.
You feel sick because of your longing of places or someone.
Yes.
It's a very, very physical. It's not just concept, even though it is very difficult to look at. Yeah. Where is it located, the longing. Yeah. So, for example, the distance is not that far, but it's very relative, between Sydney and Yogyakarta or Sydney and Surabaya. But it also has a lot of effort.
That's right.
And half of your life is like in a dream, in an idea.
Yes.
So a lot of the time I might be in Yogyakarta, but my family are in Sydney. But it's not only my family, the comfortable breakfast moment or evening, things like that. So even though I was living in northern beaches or in Yogyakarta, some half of my head space was not there. So it's not only the physicality of that home itself. I mean, my body interpreted also in different ways. And my practice, actually, the more I'm conscious about what it is very experiential.
Yeah.
So I share experiences more than ideas. For example, about nuances, about feeling, and I have to go through that places. I have to be there to share the idea of, like, for example, about how nature wins at the end. I have to be there to see it, to experience the greatness of it. If I was in eastern part of Australia or eastern part of Sydney, go to a cliff underneath it and you can feel these big waves. And ancient rocks here, million of years, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I think that experience only can be shared through experiencing it. Yeah. I think a lot of my work is in that. And home is very much like that. I constantly producing work or making work based on home and places, significant places and significant homes.
Thank you for being so generous and honest about that question. Both of the groups of artworks in this exhibition draw on unique Javanese cultural traditions. Firstly, we have the wayang Kulit, which is the shadow puppetry tradition of Java, and the second is the unique practice of Kamasan painting. As well as being an artist, yourself and your partner, Dr. Siobhan Campbell, are researchers and scholars helping to create discourse and knowledge around these Indigenous cultural heritage. Could you talk about these traditions a little bit more specifically and what they've come to mean to you and how they may have shaped the way you think and kind of act in the world?
Thank you, James. That's a big question. Siobhan is more, of course, thanks to Siobhan, she's more like the researcher with, and then she produces texts and essays.
In a traditional way.
You know, in the Western sort of academia.
Yes.
Where my production is mostly to art forms. Materials. I graduated in 2000s. I think my practice were more like into urgency. How can I be understood as quick as I can? Because of literally, I mean, verbally, English a second language, and my practice was in Sydney.
Yeah.
And so expressive art was a way of getting a quick impact, painting, fast painting and stuff. Whereas this wayang kulit and Kamasan painting is process based. It teaches me how to slow down my process and understanding process a bit more, like in a theater. Because wayang kulit is also theater based, and Kamasan painting is also related to theater or performance or ritual based, performative. There have to be planned, things like that, and that's what it teach both teach my practice teach me a lot. It is very important for my sort of development in my career and also my approaches. Wayang kulit, wayang is a very complicated translation, and kulit means skin, so shadow play or shadow puppet. It's not like that. It's actually skin silhouette puppet. That's wayang kulit is. Yeah. So because of the words, words is a playing a lot into the meaning and translations in my practice in general. Look like that simple, but like wayang kulit also I challenge whoever translated as a shadow puppet. I don't think that it's translated that way or should not be translated that way. So its cultural translation is also very important. I guess because audience is becoming very important to me and to art world in general. Wayang kulit have their own specific audience in a particular town, for example, in Java. Everyone knows, the audience knows the story. Back forwards, they grew up with it, agreements. But if I bring that to Sydney, to Mosman, to Melbourne, I will have to have different audience all together. That's the difference. So audience becoming very important. And Karao is also, paper Karao is a Chinese tradition, French traditions. I look into a lot of folk art in different ways. And shadow play or shadow theater have rooted in a very ancient, in a lot of different places, in the indigenous cave, using hand, telling stories. But the bottom side of it is storytelling. So the narrative and storytelling is a great part of it.
When I'm, as a curator, researching exhibitions with artists or kind of researching the world through an artist's kind of lens, I'm always excited to discover new things, new understandings of the world. Your work often draws on kind of colonial histories of both Indonesia, Australia, Bali, and Papua. Stories which are not very well known or talked about. So what does it mean to you to carry around these stories, and could you reflect on what it means to tell these stories to new audiences, often in faraway places like the University of Connecticut in America or in Singapore?
I think I was not, at the beginning, I don't think that I choose stories to tell. But along the way, I think story chose me.
Yeah, oh, great.
I'm saying that because I was trained as an abstract painter, where story was not part of the agenda of it.
Yeah.
Some abstract painter telling stories, but it's different exercise altogether.
Yeah.
So I also learned to techniques and ways of storytelling from different art form, from like shadow play, from a choreographer, from theater, from poetries, songs. Those are influence me in the way what is the most significant of stories. And in my area, in Eastern Java, in my mother area, in near Surabaya, in Sidoarjo, the folk theater was ludruk, and mainly telling story about the struggle between the native and the colonial prior to the 1945. And above ludruk, there is wayang kulit, like a shadow play, mainly talking about Mahabharata and Ramayana, Hindu teaching, which then twisted into Islamic teaching. There's a different again, there's a more religious sort of and morality, and then ludruk is more struggle of the independence prior to the 1945. So and then there are films, there are other things of storytelling. But I focus on the time of the struggle between the struggle of independence, and saying that to the current issues, of course, we all struggling to becoming independence, financial independence, and thinking independence, even equality independence. So I use that also. I adopt that theater, folk theater from Surabaya, to talk or to discuss or to bring the issues of freedom.
You're very fortunate to be, an artist working in lots of different ways, collaboratively, hosting performances, doing things right across, different museums and contexts across Australia, Southeast Asia as well. What do you most enjoy about your practice as an artist?
What do I most enjoy about my practice is actually, it's a really good question. I'm very, very, very grateful that I just make enough living, and I also try as much as I can to give a life to art forms, whether it is here to share with students or to encourage friends in Sydney, but also the use of my studio in East Java and also in central in Yogyakarta, in Imogiri, for the cause of art or culture. To cut short of that, I'm very fortunate. I feel fortunate when my practice is actually can connect individuals or culturals to a degree. I think one of the greatest problem that we face is we are becoming, or we are much, much more individualistic, and that's very dangerous for any society. And I think to connect people through art is a great pleasure. I think it's reduced a lot of pain and isolations, so that we can potentially see the world in a much more optimistic.
Yeah, I think, that generosity of spirit really comes through in this exhibition, just in the richness of the work and the richness of the storytelling. And it's such a great experience for our audiences here at Deakin. So thank you. You recently presented your first survey exhibition up at Bundanon Art Museum in New South Wales just a few weeks ago, which is incredible. And the works you presented here as well are from a particular period of time in your life. creating that survey, and then have you had a chance to reflect on these past works that you've represented now? And what was it like seeing those older works again, pulling them together? Were there any observations that you came kind of seeing those old works again?
It's again, I'm just trying to be as honest as we can. I don't think I have something if I can ask to myself is actually to spend a bit more time alone with the works. But so far, you know, in exhibition, you are given or you feel like that you entertain people, or you feel like that you have to communicate with people. But it's a funny thing between artists and the works because those work are like your children. You were spending a lot of time together in the studio, and then you put them in a box or exhibiting it somewhere, and then you are no longer near and that close to them, and just to see them on the wall that is distance with you, I think there is a little bit of feeling of isolations.
Yeah.
You cannot see your children just like in a box. It's not natural. But at the same time, you are proud. You are proud of it. To the work. I know that the work have their own destiny and life and things like that.
And often as an artist, once you put the work up, you've got your own commitments and you don't get to have that one-on-one time again with the work.
Yeah, I know I will be regretting it when I'm back home. Yeah.
So a big thank you to Jamadi for sharing your thoughts with us today. It's always wonderful to talk and to generate conversations around art and around creative research, and to connect our exhibitions in this way here at Deakin with the teaching and learning. A big thank you for today's conversation to Tabitha Davies, our Education and Public Programs Officer, and to Ben Gurvich from Benzen Video Productions for organising and shooting this video interview. Thanks also to our Art Collection and Galleries team for helping with this wonderful exhibition. Be sure not to miss it in real life. Jamadi, the Unaccounted Sea, continues at the Deakin University Art Gallery until the 14th of June 2024.